and welcome to Salento with Love. I'm Davide Mengoli and thank God it's Friday. And just like every Friday, we like to deal with a Q&A. And this week we are talking about a very interesting subject, refurbishment. Now, Italy, it's the home of the Greeks and the Romans and even before that. So it's not unusual to come across buildings, and especially in this part of the world with an incredible influence from those periods, to come across buildings that were built 300-400 years ago or 100 years ago, and if they haven't gone through a refurbishment, then they're waiting for you. But together with that, it comes the challenge and the question, how do I get about refurbishing a property in Italy? Well, we're going to be structuring today our answer because there is not really a straight answer, but my experience has taught me a lot. A lot of people are driven by the beauty of the architectural features of some of these buildings, of a palazzi, a small house, a country home, and they've purchased it without really thinking through about the process of refurbishment or thinking through the cost of refurbishment. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I mean, I've lived in England for many years. I've also done some refurbishment in the US, and it doesn't matter where you are. The principles are always the same. When you're buying a property that you don't physically move in immediately as a result of purchasing the property, but you need to do some interventions to that property, well, really you need to do those working out before, because sometimes some of these buildings, if they are ancient buildings, they're full of surprises. So, what would be the process? Well, I would say the process is to, before and after. So, before means that you've potentially showed interest in the building. It means that you have potentially made an offer to purchase the building, so the price is agreed. At this stage, before, well, potentially a property finder anywhere in Italy will be able to give you already a good indication of some of the elements that could imply into the refurbishment process. But at this stage, you really need a professional figure. In Italy, well, we need a geometra. Could be one figure. It's probably at the bottom of the scale, the geometra, because then you have an architecture and then you have a building engineer. So a geometra, first of all, will be able to have a look and do some due diligence on the building, especially if it's an old building. First of all, we want to establish the fact that areas haven't been added on and they are not really on our plans. So we really need to make sure that first of all, the due diligence gets done. Also, the geometra will be the one that, if we decide to take things forward, could potentially do the paperwork to present to the local borough. But at this stage, we need an architect. But we will look at that figure after. So the geometry could be a figure that we can bring in before we move to the purchasing, just to make sure that we have a very good idea of what we're getting ourselves into. So that will be the before, and the geometry will also be one to give us some ideas on cost. Yes, how many dollars, how many pounds, how many euros is going to cost us. The geometra is not going to be able to create quotations at this stage, but it will be able to tell us exactly what we need to do in terms of following through. If it is a very, very old building, potentially we will need to get permission not just from the borough, but we may have to go to the region, because if it is a protected building, a listed building, then we need to go a little bit above just getting the SHIA, which is the document that you need to fill in with the local borough before you get the work done. So the geometra, this figure, will be able to tell us those things. Once we are happy with that, and we're happy with approximately what we're getting ourselves into, then we are stepping into purchasing the property. So we're now moving into the after. Now, the after is a very interesting part of the business because it depends how you want to handle it. An architect, if we bring in an architect at this stage, normally an architect could be between 10, an architect could cost us between 10 to 12% of the total value of our refurbishment. So whatever we're going to spend to refurbish our property, if it's going to be, for example, 100,000, for example, euros, including cost of material, cost of labor, going from building, going from tiling, heating system and everything else, well, the cost of the architect to supervise the project, to get us all the relevant permissions, to also make sure that the site is safe. By law in Italy, you need to do that, and so to have a safe plan, and also to then get everything stamped at the end of the project, we are looking at 10 to 12%. So the architect is not just the person who does the drawings and the plans and everything else, which will be included in that price there. The architect is technically our building project manager. Now, a lot of people over the years thought that they could do without that, and they just thought, well, I can just do it all by myself and I can cover this, I can go and get this paperwork done. Well, I would strongly advise against doing things by yourself, not just here in Italy, but anywhere where you don't know the system. It slows you down, and in the long run, you'll end up spending more money. So it's good to use really the mechanisms. Now, it's very important when we get to this stage of the architect and before. What can you do before you get to the architect and decide who you're going to engage to be your project manager? Well, there is something in the middle here. This you can do. And your property finder, potentially your property management company that is going to handle your property afterwards, will be able to guide you through. And this is to get you quotes. So we can try to establish by having a schedule how much we're going to spend. Now, how do you divide a building project? Experience. Experience tells you exactly how you divide a building project. So what are the figures? Well, the figures are, depending on what you need to do, builders, I would say, number one, you may need to take down a wall, opening a door, building a little extra part of the house within whatever is possible. So the first quote that we want to get is from the builder. So we want to get at least 3 builders to come along and quote us based on our simple drawings, if we're not talking about a very big project, this is. And so we want the builder to tell us in principle, what would it cost to do the things that we would like to achieve? What are the second figure? Well, the work almost aligned with the builders. And we're looking at electricians, plumber, now, 2 very important figures. They need to work together. Electrician, plumber. Because at the same time with the builder, these 2 need to work simultaneously to speed up the process. Same principle. Well, you know where you're going to put your bathroom, unless you need an architect to do everything for you. You know where you're going to put your bedroom. So at this stage, getting 3 quotations from a plumber and a local electrician to come in and, according to your plans, give you a rough quote. We can shift about between 10 to 15% from that quotation. but at least we have a very clear indication of what it would cost. Also, what will that tell you or give you is the opportunity to decide who's going to work for you and in your property, and who you're going to keep as well for future references, because you may want to keep the electrician on board or the plumber on board for years to come to perhaps help you. But if you have a property management company looking after your property after it's finished, perhaps that's not something that you need to worry about. But if you were doing it all by yourself, that would be the process. So you want to make sure that you get at least 3 electricians, 3 plumbers, 3 builders to do your quotations. Then who do you need? Well, then you need the tilers. You need the tilers because I'm sure you're going to do all your bathroom. You're obviously going to tile all your floors. You may keep some of the old floors that need to be restoring. So that's a figure that is very important to bring into the equation. What else do you need? Doors and windows. Yeah, doors and windows. Now, what can we say about some of these things is that in Italy at the moment there are some incredible government incentives going almost to the point of giving you everything that you spend, and on top of that 10%, or in some cases giving you 50% back in the tax that you could potentially pay. So let me just to connect to that last part. If you then end up renting your property and generating revenue, and you have renovated the property and took advantage of some of the grants that the government is putting into place, well, you then be able to discount that from the tax that you need to pay to the government. Alternatively, if it's going to be your property, there are other grants that you can apply, which is the 110% bonus, which applies specifically to making the building energy efficient in majority of the cases. So things like doors and windows, replacing a boiler, heating, aircon could come into that sort of area. So something that you need to look at, and something that your accountant can really help you with the applications. So once we have quotations from these categories, builders, electricians, plumbers, tilers, doors and windows, we really have covered more or less everything. We are left with paint and decorating. We are left with really the little details, it could be the furniture, it could be other little details. But this, and a lot of those little details, would probably somehow come within this area here. Now, once we have that, then we are probably ready now to approach an architect. We want to do things the right way around, or I like to do things the wrong way around. I don't know, I've got my own methods, and I've refurbished many properties. A lot of them are of my own property, and a lot I've done for other clients. And I like sometimes to switch things around. What could happen if we skip this passage is that we go to the architect, and the architect has got his own team of builders, his own team of electricians and plumbers and tilers and people that make doors and windows. There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. But we don't have a choice. And we don't have a comparison tool as well. How good it is to have a comparison. So one of the jobs that we do is making sure really that you can get to the end of the process saving money. This is very important for us. And in some cases, we take total control over the project to make sure that that happens. What we really are passionate about, it's for you to get to the end of the process with your expectations and within the budget that potentially you had in mind at the beginning. And we can only do this really through a consultation. So anyone that thinks they can skip this kind of cycle and go by their own way, well, they're going to get perhaps into some sort of situations. Also, I've seen so many people that they enjoy coming over and spending 2 weeks tiling their own bathrooms, or perhaps running their own electrics because they know about electrics. But that's another story. But if you really would like to follow things through and pick up a beautiful property anywhere in Italy, and then you would like to see that property finished to your standard, please follow this. Before you buy the property, get a professional advice about the steps and what needs to be done, paperwork, permissions, and what kind of work needs to be carried through. That's one step. Then you have decided to purchase the property. Now at this stage, you can get quotations from these people here, and at that stage then you choose on exactly the same principle by viewing more than one, the architect that is going to do the work for you based on the people that you've chosen at the prices that you have chosen. And then there's the responsibility of the architect to make sure that they stay within the standard and within the budget. Hopefully this Q&A this week was useful. Please always follow the instructions, it's very important. And when you don't know, please ask. We love answering your questions. Thank you very much for following this week's Q&A, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I think sometimes the answers are so simple, but maybe not. If you have enjoyed it, put a like, leave a comment, and tell us what is it that you really would like to know in purchasing a property in Italy.